Around America, there are hundreds of paranormal teams investigating cases. In central Pennsylvania, there's one team known for their abilities and results, Mo Valley Paranormal. Join us now for a look into the world of hauntings and how the experts investigate the occurrences. This is Mo Valley Paranormal Live on WBLF. Now, here's Dave Shannon and Tyson Lidgett.
And a good Saturday evening to one and all. Welcome once again to our regular weekly get-together and discussion of the paranormal and the investigation of it. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're enjoying your evening.
For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, where you been? And in addition to that, I want to make note of the fact that Tyson, of course, is the founder and lead investigator of Mo Valley Paranormal, a title that comes with much responsibility and, from what I've heard, much expense.
Amen. Amen.
But, yeah, we're here. We get together. We talk about paranormal investigation. It's been a real popular topic, and, you know, television's had a lot to do with that. So we do talk about what I refer to as paranormal reality TV that shows up. And, of course, interestingly enough, as we speak, a new episode has already played for Ghost Adventures for some strange reason.
Really?
Yeah, I was caught by surprise looking at the schedule for this week, finding that they had a new episode of Ghost Adventures coming up at 9 o'clock on Saturday, and I don't know if they're going to continue down that road now for a while, so we may have 3 shows to talk about. Of course, I don't know how much longer the run is going to be for Paranormal Lockdown. I know we have at least one more next week, and so it may be coming to its end, or it may continue on. Well, we'll get to that when we talk about the paranormal reality TV. Let's move on to other things, like the lockdown coming up at the beginning of April at a fan favorite. And once again, if you're new to the show or new to what Mo Valley Paranormal does, they set up these lockdowns where you get to experience what it's like to be a paranormal investigator for a night. And you get to find out that a lot of the time, all you do is sit around and listen to other people's stomachs growl.
Right.
But that's all a part of it. Believe me, it's just the way paranormal investigation goes, and you deal with that. And for those couple of seconds that you get some sort of unexplainable activity, I'd say by and large it's worth it.
Oh yeah. And
so that's the way it goes. But we have a favorite place coming up for this early April lockdown. Tyson, give us the details.
Yeah, Friday, April 7th, just like Dave said, we are returning to a team and guest favorite alike, and that is the old Clearfield County Jail. I believe that is 300 North Front Street in Clearfield. It's currently a land mapping service. They bought the building that the old jail used to reside in, and what a cool and beautiful building this is, especially if you're in history and architecture and whatnot. And if you've ever been to Eastern State Penitentiary, the way the rotunda is set out, and it is the hub of the wheel of the jail, and you can look down every range, and that's the way that the range of the old Clearfield County Jail reminds you of. It looks like a tier from Eastern State Penitentiary, the old Pennsylvania method of corrections, as it's called. And it's not like, cell doors you see on TV shows like Lockdown and whatnot that play. It is the old iron bars across the door and very cold cement, and it's
and teeny tiny windows.
Yeah. And just a great location that we love getting back to. And, knock on wood, last, 2 lockdowns we've done there last year were extremely active both nights. And it's been since the end of October since we've been there, so we're hoping that, our absence has been long enough that somebody is willing to talk to us again. And you know, like we've said over and over and over again here, it's always a flip of the coin whether you know you get activity or not. But yeah, I mean, our lockdowns are always fun. We always get a lot of great feedback. People enjoy themselves. Just like Dave said, you get to experience what we do. You know, we take 6 hours overnight. You know, it starts at 10, over at 4 a.m. And you get to use basic equipment and investigate along with us. You know, see stuff we do. You guys get to try your hand at, you know, asking questions and doing EVP burst sessions and all that stuff. And you know, there's refreshments throughout the night. And if you're hearing this now on Saturday night on the radio, hopefully you get a chance to get a spot because we're recording Friday afternoon, and actually the spots open up at 6 o'clock Friday evening. So most likely, you know, if pattern follows itself the way it goes other lockdowns, by the time you hear this Saturday night, we will probably be sold out. But
if you were hedging on making a decision, now's the time to do it.
Yeah, please, you know, at least get in contact and get put on an alternates list if we are sold out. That way, if somebody gives up their spot, you slide into that spot. But I think this one's going to be a one-nighter. Those two-nighters are just hell on the team. It's a lot of work. So I think it's going to be a one-nighter this time. But yeah, we're really looking forward to getting back to the old Clearfield County Jail. There were 3 hangings, a murder, and a handful of suicides. So more than enough, you know, potential for activity, let alone the residual, you know, human emotion that's in a jail like that. So
one of the things that was amazing to me, I think this was during your October lockdown where you had an unseen entity smoking a cigarette.
Yes.
That is some remarkable stuff.
Yeah.
And
were you there? I can't remember. Were you there or not?
No, I missed that one. The last time I was at Clearfield County Jail was our what we recorded for maybe a future TV show.
With Eric Altman there.
Yes.
Yeah, as Dave said, at our 2 last lockdowns, we had a cigarette smoke itself. And it's amazing to watch happen, you know, down in the old solitary. And even today, cigarettes are a form of currency in jail. And I had someone, you know, ask somebody if I could have a cigarette, and they gave me a cigarette, and I lit it. And I held it in my hand away from my body, and I said, go ahead, take a drag. And, you know, multiple times you saw the cherry, or, you know, the
embers,
embers of the cigarette light up like someone took a drag.
Amazing.
And there was no draft, nothing coming in to, you know, to heat it up or whatnot. But it was really, really cool to see, and everyone there, you know, that got to see it was, you know, impressed by the activity. So that's just one thing that happened over those 2, you know.
Which area did that happen in? Was it up in the cells
or
no,
down in the solitary?
Okay.
Down the old solitary.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of stuff that goes on there. So.
Yeah, and that's just downright remarkable to see that happen. And it always brings, you know, one of the things, you know, there's a lot of discussion, and we've talked about it here on the show, as to with the interaction with flashlights. If a spirit decides to communicate with you via a flashlight and turning it on and off in response to questions,
right,
that is thought to perhaps be more of an electrical type thing than it is a physical type thing. In other words, they don't actually twist the cap on a mag light. They're able to make the contacts, you know, the positives and the negatives get together and the light comes on.
Right.
That's basically, and the reason it's felt to be that way is sometimes when you watch and you've got communications going with a mag light, you see it go off very slowly. Which is virtually impossible, even with a human hand acting very delicately with a mag light, to get that to happen.
It's not virtually, it is impossible, because the way the mag light is created to work, it's either off or on. I mean, and when you either twist it, you know, counterclockwise or clockwise to make those connections happen, there's no in between. It's either off or on. And like Dave has said, you set the flashlight down, and we have watched it start as a pinpoint of light and then grow bright and come on, or else it's been bright and then dims down to a pinpoint and goes out. And all we can figure is that is energy manipulation. They are raising the amperage to make that connection to turn that light on. Now we've seen those flashlights be physically moved.
Yes.
The Reed Funeral Home, we've watched, two flashlights roll back and forth as they were being played with. But the actual turning on and off of that flashlight, we don't believe is a physical manipulation, but more of an energy manipulation.
But you end up talking about that, and there's any number of things. I mean, if you talk about the idea of the spirit boxes, PSB 7 or PSB 11, that's manipulation of electrical energy. And EVPs, same kind of thing.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, there is no explanation for a lit cigarette to act as though it's being dragged on other than physical manipulation. Right. That's the only way that happens.
Yeah. And that's always impressive to see. I was impressed myself when it actually happened. And
now you were holding on to the cigarette while it was doing that, right?
Yes.
Did you feel, as usually happens, cold around you when that was going on, or you didn't have any experience at all as far as the temperature around you and where the cigarette was?
No, I couldn't sense any kind of physical change, around my hand or whatnot. It was just the fact of watching the cigarette smoke itself. So
amazing stuff. And as Tyson said, as with all of the lockdowns, there's no guarantee that would necessarily happen. Those types of things would happen again. But it was something that happened in the past. And to be honest with you, folks, just from the standpoint of, you never know how long a building's going to be standing the way it is. And boy, is that just from the architectural and historical standpoint of that jail, it's worth it just to go in and see that, because there will come a point here where there won't be, outside of maybe Rockview, there won't be too many old facilities that are left outside of the ones that are preserved by paranormal groups to allow people to come in and investigate. So keep that in mind. And once again, if you were hedging on it, make your contact right now with Tyson and the crew at Mo Valley Paranormal. You're listening to Mo Valley Paranormal Live. We're on News Talk 970 WBLF, as we are every Saturday night from 10 to 11. We'll be back with more right after this. News Talk 970 WBLF. It is Mo Valley Paranormal Live, our regular Saturday get-together and discussion of paranormal investigation and paranormal activity. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
And if you missed our first segment, of course, we were making sure that if you had thought about going to the next lockdown that Mo Valley Paranormal is having, you may have missed your chance, but, go ahead and make contact anyway, as the date has been announced for the old Clearfield County Jail in downtown Clearfield, and that's April 7th?
Yes, Friday, April 7th.
And so if you were, hedging on whether you were going to go to the next lockdown because of the popularity of this one in particular, there may be a slim chance that you can get in, or as Tyson mentioned in our first segment, there's that opportunity too where maybe someone will have gone ahead and made the reservation but then has to withdraw because something happens, that they're just unable to attend when the lockdown happens. So, if nothing else, you would be on that list of potential fill-ins should someone decide that they couldn't be a part of that upcoming lockdown in April. Once again, at the Clearfield County, the old Clearfield County Jail. Right. So, great place to go. We just had a very good investigation there in Phillipsburg.
Yeah.
That had a lot of activities, some great EVPs that I was able to gather. And, it's the And once again, I'm still at the point, and I don't know, maybe at some point this will go away, but I'm still at that point when I review these EVPs that I record myself, that I still have my holy you-know-what moment.
Right. No, I mean, there's moments that, when we're investigating, you kind of keep a mental track of when you expect or when you think you should hear something on the recording. You're walking around somewhere, and you kind of have an idea where on the recording you are when it happens, and you hear something with your own ears, and you expect to hear it. But there are times when, when Darren and I are reviewing the audio that, when you catch a good EVP, especially a Class A, that's, wow, you kind of look at each other like, that's really cool. So, I mean, you never really lose that. But, I mean, I know what you're talking about. I remember when I first started investigating and caught EVPs, it was like, wow, I can't believe I caught that. But, no, I mean, I don't think it really goes away, especially when you catch a good Class A EVP that's clear and you can hear what it's saying.
Yeah, the one that, it was the other thing that was amazing to me when I reviewed that from our latest investigation was the latest lockdown, rather, was the fact that, some of the time, this amazes me that you can hear it with your ear. And everyone that was there at that investigation would tell you that they heard something.
Right.
Yet a digital recorder does not pick that up. Mm-hmm. And you try to wrap your head around that it made a noise. And of course, for us to hear something, the air has to vibrate somehow. In order for us to hear something, that's how our ears work. This vibrating stuff hits your eardrum, and then your brain makes sense of it. But to hear it and then play back a recorder and not hear it is just like, that's kind of mind-boggling too.
Right.
When you have that happen, because and it's the amazing thing is you'll hear the reaction, especially during a lockdown. You'll hear the reaction of everybody going, or Tyson maybe is leading that particular group, and he'll say, "Did you guys hear that?" And it's like, you're sitting there, it's like, I didn't hear anything on the voice recorder, and then everybody goes, "Yeah, wow," and it's like you really expect it to be there, but it's not always.
What's really cool is even before I say that, I'll hear it, and everyone goes because they heard it, and that's the cool moments for us. I mean, because we joke about it with our guests that we live vicariously through our lockdowns with our guests because we're so conditioned, desensitized to activity, unless it's something mind-blowing like watching a door close or open in front of us or something like that, that, we just, disregard it. We'll be talking and flashlights will be going off and on, and we just don't pay attention to it. And so, I mean, when stuff happens, that people really take, a gasp or surprised by, we really enjoy that people are experiencing. I can't talk. I wish I could experience good speech today, but that people are experiencing, the stuff that, got us excited and still gets us excited. I've mentioned over and over again that nothing still gets us excited like a good disembodied voice. When you hear something, speaking audibly and you can hear that and everybody hears that really gets our juices flowing and gets us excited about investigating.
Yeah, it is amazing stuff, and it certainly, if you have watched this on television, and probably a good percentage of you folks that may be listening to us here on the radio, got your interest spurred by watching one of the paranormal reality TV shows at some point along the way. Hopefully, you started with Ghost Hunters. Yeah. Because that was, as Tyson refers to, the gold standard,
right?
When it comes to investigating, and maybe watch some of the ones that have followed. I think one of the things you'll find if you've watched the ones that have followed, that it's, each group approaches things differently. And of course, this comes through television production. And I'm sure they have focus groups that they put together to see whether people actually enjoy watching these things or what it is about the show that they do enjoy. When in fact, for me, And after doing a couple of investigations with Tyson and the team from Mo Valley Paranormal, I just got to the point where I really started to look at some of the shows differently than I did prior to. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's a vast difference between what we see on TV as far as paranormal shows and what actually happens on a real investigation, because they are condensing 6 or 8 hours of an investigation into an hour. So
yes.
People think it's that exciting, and then they come to a lockdown, and God forbid, but it happens where not a whole lot happens that night, and they're like, man, this is boring. Like, well, this is paranormal investigating. That's the way it happens, because a lot of your evidence is not discovered until you review the audio and video.
And that usually comes in spurts.
Right.
You get a little spurt of it, and you hope it's going to continue on, and then it just, and this is another thing we talk about, energy and spirits needing energy to communicate. And that's another example of it. I think, not unlike if you set out to do something physical, your body will get tired at a certain point, and you can't do what you set out to do. And it's the same thing, I think, on the spirit side, only it's with, what seems to be electrical energy. And eventually your energy runs out and you can't communicate anymore. It just comes to an end.
Yeah, I would even say that, what we experienced at the Bach residence there, that was a rarity, because, the amount of the physical type of activity we had, the one part sticks out of my head clearly was we were all downstairs. It sounded like someone picked up the edge of the end of the bed and slammed it 3 times on the floor.
Yeah,
just a very loud
absolutely.
Bang,
it was
bang, bang.
Yeah.
And that kind of physical activity, and the footsteps running and then walking.
And we had the door slammed too.
Right. That kind of physical activity, for as prolonged as we did, is very rare. If you came to that lockdown, you got a hell of a show. That was a good lockdown, and that was a good investigation. If we were actually recording that and collected all that evidence that night, that would have been just a treasure trove of evidence for that night.
It would have been hard to make a 1-hour show out of it, just simply because of the amount of activity that was there.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. So, and hopefully things turn out the same way at the Clearfield County Jail. We hope you plan on joining us. I'm planning on being there at the moment.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, looking forward to being with the fans of the radio show and the fans of Paranormal Investigating coming up there on April 7th. Right now, it's a timeout. We got to take it. We got some commercial announcements for you on News Talk 970 WBLF. Discussion of the paranormal and the investigation thereof, otherwise known as Mo Valley Paranormal Live. I am Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Try and hold back the urge to yell charge, but
yeah, sorry about that.
Hello, folks.
Well, the one problem is with phones, they have this thing now, it's called Do Not Disturb. The problem is I'll put it on and then forget to take it off. And then I'll look at my phone and it's like, you just missed 3 phone calls.
Right.
Oh, Anyway, as we do on each and every week's show, when there are new versions of these paranormal reality TV shows out there, we talk about the ones that most recently aired. Now, we may backtrack a little bit because Tyson just got to, probably because of the there's a little bit of a delay, I guess, in the way they're allowing your particular cable provider allowing you to get to the shows, I guess, a week afterward, after they actually air.
It used to be good. I have that Comcast On Demand, And it used to be as soon as the show aired, the next day it was on. I could get on demand, I could look at it. Well, for whatever reason, and it seems to be only Paranormal Lockdown, because other shows I like to watch, they're there. But it seems like Paranormal Lockdown, they are not putting them on demand, and when you go to look at them, all it tells you is when they're going to air again. So I mean, they always air prior to the new episode the next week. So it always says, well, it'll air next week at 6 p.m. The next one 7 p.m. so on and so forth. And for whatever reason, I can never catch the one that's supposed to be for this week. So I just now watched the one that was for last week, the Murder House in Louisiana.
Yes, the old Creole cottage.
Yeah.
In New Orleans that was built in 1829 with the murder. We talked about this last week, but Tyson had a couple of things he did want to add in relation to that show, and I guess most importantly, whether anything that's left in that property outside of the paranormal energy that's there had anything to do with what went on back then, in particular appliances.
Yeah, I mean, they kept making a big deal about, that, and I get it. I get it. I had a friend of mine who had a family member commit suicide tragically, and they asked me to come in and investigate. It was just my friend and I, because they were experiencing some things that they thought may have been from this family member. And I get it, what Nick and Katrina were feeling, because when I walked into the house, it was very, very heavy, very thick. There was a very negative feel. And they had not been in the house since the family member had committed suicide. So I get that. That sense of feeling whatever. But your paranormal investigators move on. You understand that you're going to experience these things. And then, making a big deal about like Nick is taking a page from Zach's playbook, and it's just, I feel it's just so heavy here. I just feel so. He's like, I feel like I'm right in the middle of a crime scene. You are. Congratulations. You are at a crime scene.
Then Captain Obvious stepped in from the side and said something about getting a hotel room.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just like, and then they were making a big deal about, they're getting lightheaded every time they open the fridge and the stove. Let me tell you what, kids, that was 10 years ago the murder-suicide happened, and I can almost guarantee that the stove and the fridge that contained the girlfriend's body parts in it were taken by forensics for evidence. Those were not the original appliances that were still in that apartment. So, you know what? I just want, oh God, give me a show, give me a paranormal reality show without the drama. There's no drama. I mean, I watch it and I look at my wife and just shake my head. It's like, you want to be taken seriously as paranormal, professional, quote unquote, paranormal investigators, but yet, like you had mentioned there last week about, Nick saying, well, we're in too deep. If, it says it wants to cut my throat and blah, blah, blah. Even if it does, it's a ghost. It's not going to cut your throat. Yeah. And I mean, put your big boy pants on, your big boy paranormal investigator pants on, and move forward and get over it, because you know what you're walking into. I'm sure it wasn't surprise. Hey, surprise! We had a murder-suicide happen in this house. You knew what went on there before you went in there. So,
yeah,
I'm done. I'll get off my orange box now.
It's the type of thing. It's like at the very most, at that point, you should be thrilled, because that's wwhy you went there.
Yes,
is to experience something paranormal.
Right.
And this is one of the things, like. And the most recent one, Ghosts in the Hood, was just absurd. Whereas I don't know, for some reason I kind of took to the Ghost Brothers was a different kind of thing, because they didn't really portray themselves as being some kind of experts when it came to paranormal investigating. Which it was just kind of a fun show.
I think theirs is March 10th. Their new season.
Oh, they're
starts.
coming back?
Yes. I just saw it last night. I believe it's March 10th. Their second season starts.
And have you heard anything about, not that you're searching for it, but the return of the Asylum Boys?
No, thank God,
okay.
Not yet.
Tennessee Wraith Chasers not scheduled at this point. Well, let's get down to what we do have. This past week's episode of Paranormal Lockdown was at the Hiram B. Scott Mansion in Joliet, Illinois, that was built in 1882. Now, Mr. Scott he made his fortune by manufacturing barbed wire.
Okay.
And his death had nothing to do with barbed wire. He happened to be an avid horseman, and he was out on his horse, and for whatever reason, the horse had something frightened it and threw him, and the way he fell led to his death.
Okay. So
he died in a riding accident, and the property was purchased by a young man by the name of Seth in 2006, and he died shortly after purchasing the property at the age of 36.
Wow.
And the crazy part about his death was he just kind of keeled over in the second floor of the building of the mansion and bled out. He had internal bleeding.
Wow.
And he just he was there, and no one else was there with him. And they came and they found him, and they said there was actually a pool of blood on the floor, which can happen, despite the fact that he bled out internally. That's going to eventually make it out of the body as well. So, at any rate, that happened to him, and then his mother and dad decided to keep the property, and his father was there, and he ended up having severe injury to his back. There's like a tower as part of the mansion, and this like recently put in spiral staircase probably mimics what originally was there to begin with. And he was coming down that, and of course it somewhat rickety and what have you, but it may have been that something did interfere with his path on the way down, and he landed on his back and was laid up for an extended period of time. Some of the claims within the building, seeing a lady in black thought to be Mrs. Scott, who was despondent pretty much after her husband died in that horse accident.
Right.
Also, there were children that passed away there, and one of the things that Seth did was he got a collection of Victorian dolls together. I don't know exactly why he did it, but he did it, and he put them in the attic at the at this mansion. So there's always activity in that area, and there were some things. They were having a little bit of poltergeist activity as well. The thought then became, because of what happened to Mr. Scott and his the fact that his wife got despondent and they lost a child there and everything, that if you live there you become cursed. Okay. And they thought this played out, and this is why Seth ended up dying from internal bleeding. Right. There's nothing to necessarily, and of course this heightens the risk that Nick and Katrina are taking, because they're going to be living there for a couple of days.
Right.
But nothing to that extent happened there outside of a normal paranormal investigation. Some of the things that happened early on in the investigation, they actually this is audible. They heard this long sigh. Katrina had asked something, or maybe it may have been just her and Nick talking, but there was just this long sigh they played it back, and it was very noticeable. So it had to have been pretty loud in that area, because Katrina reacted to it, and of course the cameraman standing a reasonable distance away, and it was loud enough that it caught everybody's attention at that particular point in time. We're going to have to take a break. We'll continue our review of Paranormal Lockdown and talk about Dead Files too, as they make a visit to Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. We'll talk about all of that coming up. It is Mo Valley Paranormal Live on News Talk 970 WBLF. It is our regular Saturday get-together and discussion of the paranormal and the investigation of it. Will continue after we take this break on News Talk 970 WBLF. News Talk 970 WBLF. It is Mo Valley Paranormal Live. We get together every Saturday evening, Tyson Widget and myself, and talk about paranormal investigating and paranormal activity and paranormal reality TV. By the way, Tyson's over there.
Hello, everybody.
And he, of course, is the founder and lead investigator of Mo Valley Paranormal. And, of course, we were reviewing Paranormal Lockdown with Nick Groff and Katrina Weidman. And in their first night investigation, they got this, we had talked about the long sigh. And they went into the attic area. The dolls are all gone, by the way. Nothing's there now. It's just the attic is there. So they took this GeoPort that they have.
Right.
And they go up there. And they get a voice, and you hear this, it's a girl's voice, and it says its name is Cindy, and it also mentions seance. And they come to find out at a later point that Seth, I think, in this, when the dolls were there, did some kind of a seance in the attic. So, you know, these were all relevant responses that they got on the GeoPort. So for their next and next to last, or actually last night investigation, they called in a couple of people who had investigated before, and they brought haunted objects with them. Their names, Greg and Dana Newkirk. And these haunted objects had nothing to do with the property. They're just things that, you know, it would be as though John Zaffis brought some stuff from his place and just randomly picked out, you know, 4 things that were haunted and brought it to an investigation. One of the things that they did bring to this investigation, and this thing, I'm not sure what everybody's thoughts about these are, but this Dybbuk box thing seems to be a pretty powerful thing. And they had a Dybbuk box. I think there's more than one. Because I don't know, it seemed to me like Zach Bagans was talking about buying the most famous Dybbuk box, but maybe this is the same one. But they brought that, they put that in the basement. Then they had this voodoo idol that they had a name for it. They called it Bobby or something. I forget what the hell it was. But they had it there, and they put it in the hallway in the second floor where they had a lot of activities. They then had a dark mirror, which Katrina used in the room where all the dolls were. And this was interesting when Katrina started to utilize this dark mirror before she actually took the cover off of it. She basically stood there and made the statement, look, if there's anything evil here, you're still stuck in that mirror. I'm just here to use this to see if there's anyone else here, and you're not allowed out of that mirror.
Right.
And it was like, hey, good for you. Take control of the situation. And then they had this, what the heck was Crone? Crone was, it was like a little doll type figure. And Dana Newkirk was in the tower part, and she took that up there with her. And once again, as they began investigating with these haunted objects, Dana got the same, honest to God, it sounded like that same long sigh that they got on the first night, but she got it up there in the tower. They also ran digital voice recorders. They did a what would be about the equivalent of a burst session.
Okay.
And they got the name Hiram in an EVP. Well, tell you what, that's about as intelligent as it gets, because the Hiram is not what you would call a common name that would be out there, and it was Hiram B. Scott's mansion.
Right.
So it was a pretty impressive thing. She also had her hair pulled up there in the tower. You know, and so they went through that investigation, and then they moved on after Greg and Dana left. And actually, that was the second night. And then the final night was when Tyson and I talked about this, that Nick and Katrina woke up and said they had nightmares. Oh, it was like, yeah, well, you know, first of all, you're somewhat sleep deprived. Second of all, you're in a house and you're doing paranormal investigations. You got all this stuff going through your head.
Right.
And mostly dreams are about things that happen to you during the day that you're trying to somehow resolve.
Yeah.
So the fact that you had nightmares had nothing to do with the fact that you're in this mansion that's haunted. They did have a situation take place. This 3D stick figure camera setup that they have, which kind of, you know, works like that SLS camera, except it doesn't have the grid that Ghost Adventures uses. And they had this very tall stick figure. They came to find out, by the way, after having the mother and her daughter come back, that Seth was actually 6'5". Well, this stick figure that appeared and interacted with Nick and Katrina would have been about 6'5". So, you know, there was some definitely some correlation there in what that camera was able to pick up. It stayed there for a while. It was kind of interesting. Nick approached it at one point, you know, because they're looking at the monitor and they can see it.
Right.
And he started to get close to it, and you could see it pull its arm back. It was like, no, I don't want to touch you. And so, you know, this thing has produced results for them before, but a majority of what they get seems to be through their Geoport. And also, on occasion, this 3D camera ends up producing some interesting results as well. So once again, the overnight stuff, just when they're sleeping, I shouldn't say overnight because they basically sleep during the morning hours of every day that they're there. Really nothing went on while they were sleeping, other than the fact that they didn't sleep well, which, once again, you would expect.
Right.
So that was Paranormal Lockdown. A good investigation, some very interesting evidence that they found. So that takes us on to the Dead Files in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida, and called in by the husband of the property because there was activity going on. They were getting concerned. The one daughter is physically drained. She was scratched. We've talked about scratching before and what we think it may mean. And she can barely get out of her bed on certain days. And you did see this one?
Just parts of it, yeah.
Okay. Well, the daughter, Brittany, is the one who's being bothered the most. And their 21-year-old son ended up being bitten. He had bite marks, like the human bite marks. I don't know. Have you ever encountered that in any investigations? Because I've seen that more than once.
Somebody getting bit?
Yeah, where the marks are there,
right.
And it's the shape of, you know, if a human tried to bite you, what it would look like.
No, just scratched.
Okay. I've seen it on TV a couple of times, but it happened to him. You know, Amy does her walkthrough. You know, there's a number of hot spots, and she starts to, you know, pick up on a couple of spirits that are there. And Amy experiences many of the things that Brittany is bothered by when she goes into her bedroom. So there's some confirmation there that the psychic medium experienced the same thing that the regular person did. There was then this little thing came out about the fact that Steve's wife, Donna, had been molested at the age of 7.
Right.
Well, Amy, while she was doing her walkthrough, talked about this, the PK manifestations, which is psychokinetic, and that comes from people that are working things out. You know, something nasty has happened to them, and they're kind of working them out, and it manifests in a way that may, you know, may involve paranormal activity and may kind of be also like the poltergeist type stuff. Steve, in his investigation, finds out that a guy who was at one time the attorney general in Massachusetts, who took down the mob for a fire that killed 492 people at this club outside of Boston. And Amy basically confirms, that the primary figure there is the one that that coincides with this guy who had been the attorney general. And someone else was involved there. His name was Charles Cessna. What a character this guy was. He came from Chicago in 1917, and he's basically a snake oil salesman, selling people property. And where this is in Santa Rosa Beach, it's a swamp. He's telling people that they're buying 10-acre farms. And he sold quite a bunch of them and got rich and never really got taken to court over it either. Imagine that. One of the other things Steve finds out about this guy who was a Confederate soldier, and he got burial duty at a site where a battle took place that was not at Santa Rosa, but he had to be a part of it. And in that particular battle, 6,000 Confederate troops were killed in that battle. And he had written down some things and remarked about what it was like to go through that. So you had a number of things that had happened there, people that lived there that had problems as well. And the wife ends up in a combination between the wife and the daughter. The daughter seemed to be part of the causes of the poltergeist activity that was going on there. And she's sensitive, as Amy labeled her. And they eventually come to the point where Amy makes her suggestions. She also referred to the mother, Donna, as a psychic vampire.
Yes.
So she said that Donna needed to visit a psychotherapist. Brittany had to work with a Reiki master, and the Reiki master needed to come in and remove what spirits were there and set boundaries so other spirits could not enter. And at the end, they do their little close, and they did find a Reiki master who came and cleansed the home.
Right.
And they did say that the activity had decreased. So I guess the remaining things that needed to be done were the wife, Donna, and the daughter, Brittany, still needed to get control of their situations in order for everything to improve at that property. That was how Dead Files went, and that's the way Mo Valley Paranormal Live is going to go for this week as well.
Right.
We'll catch you again next week, folks. Good night, everybody.
Good night, folks.